We'll call to order the regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees for Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020. If you'd please stand and join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance, which this evening is going to be led by Beiger students Manny Rodriguez and Addison Winsett.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for leading us in that. Item 1.03, adoption of the agenda. It is recommended that the agenda for the January 22nd, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees be adopted as presented.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now moving into the recognition section of the agenda, item 2.01, Beiger School presentation. Mrs. Kosick.
President Curry, Mr. Barker, and honorary school board members, it's my pleasure to welcome you to Beiger Elementary School this evening. During my first year at Beiger, it became obvious that we needed to provide a more robust and intensive reading intervention to address our declining standardized test scores for a growing population of our students. My instructional leadership team and I began researching ways to overcome this when I was approached by Katie Stockstill, who had a possible solution. Mrs. Stockstill asked if Beiger would be interested in piloting an elementary Read 180 program. I was familiar with John Young's Read 180 program. However, I was curious about how we would successfully incorporate this program into our elementary school. She explained that Read 180 was an evidence-based program with a tremendous track record. More importantly, she knew that the program had the potential to reach a large number of our upper elementary students that required additional targeted support while maintaining the integrity of our current reading interventions for our primary students. And this was the beginning of our Read 180 journey. This evening, the staff and I would like to highlight our Read 180 program, or what we affectionately call Camp Read 180. In March of last year, several of us were fortunate enough to visit Ready Elementary School, a school that looks similar to Beiger in the Griffith Public School District. We went there to gain some background and expertise from their teachers, as they had been working with the program for several years. At that visit, I talked with students and teachers, observed student engagement, and honestly, I was hooked when I left. However, I was still concerned about implementation, our available resources, and logistics. After leaving, I began to problem solve some of my concerns by involving my 5th and 6th grade teachers, Beiger's ILT team, and actually anybody that would listen. Later in March, I was invited by HMH to attend their Literacy Leadership Summit in Atlanta, Georgia. This experience changed everything, literally. There, I listened to testimonials, collaborated with other leaders, networked, and gained enthusiasm for the immense possibilities that Read 180 brought to our students. A quick story. I was in Atlanta by myself, which usually isn't a problem for me. I can meet friends anywhere, but I did feel a bit out of my element. I knew very little about the program, and most of the educational leaders there had some experience with it. On the first day, I attached myself to Mr. Joseph Pye, who's displayed on the screen there. At the time, I didn't know he was the superintendent for Dorchester II in South Carolina, but as the day pushed into evening and I was still following him around, I learned that why he was there and his expert team. They were the keynote speakers the following morning. I share this because his words and passion inspired me, produced thought-provoking conversation, and he challenged me to jump with both feet into the possibilities that he believed this program would bring our students here in School City of Mishawaka. So I came back and I sold it to Miss Gilbert and Mrs. Miniger, and later hired Mrs. Hicksonbaugh, who was also on board to start with us in the fall. Our challenges included, can we make this work in our schedule? Which basically meant we would have to build our schedule around 3 blocks of uninterrupted time throughout the day for our 4th graders, our 5th graders, and our 6th graders, so that they were able to participate in Read 180. We had to decide what students would be selected to participate, where we would house the program, and finally, creating buy-in with our students and parents to achieve our final and most important goal, to improve reading proficiency. However, I knew that to achieve these goals, we'd need the support of everyone in our building. By the end of May, we had developed our master schedule, which supported the program, identified students to participate from multiple assessment sources, and we were faced with one last hurdle: turning a traditional computer lab into an inviting and exciting space for students to embrace Camp Read 180. This took a team of staff volunteering one summer evening. I might have bribed with some pizza. Some were involved in the program, and others just because it's what Beiger does. The video I'm about to share with you will show you the transformation that occurred to the space, the teachers, and most importantly, our 57 Beiger students. A special thank you to Isaac Hayes, a Beiger Elementary School graduate, a Mishawaka High School student, and a leader for the Mishawaka Network. He took our vision, a script created by Miss Gilbert, and produced this incredible video of Camp Read 180.
When a striving reader gets their first real taste of reading, something extraordinary happens. Walls come down, confidence builds, and "I can't do it" becomes "I can't be stopped." As the leading blended learning solution, Read 180 helps students who are 2 or more years behind become active, accomplished readers. By bringing teachers, families, and adaptive technology together, it meets students on their unique paths to provide a truly personalized experience. It targets areas of the brain essential to reading proficiency. Read 180 meets each learner's unique ability level, interests, and needs. It also empowers 1 million students to achieve more every single day. Developed using the latest cognitive neuroscience, Read 180 changes the brains of struggling readers by helping different parts work together more effectively. With a fresh, intuitive experience, the new Read 180 is in a class by itself. By tapping into the brain science and growth mindset, a more personalized instructional approach accelerates achievement. A more efficient teacher ecosystem offers easy access to real-time data and instructional planning, so every lesson can shine. New, engaging content promotes student choice and helps readers make deeper connections that extend well beyond the classroom. A typical Read 180 session begins with the whole class working together with the teacher. Then, the class breaks up into small groups. Each group takes a turn reading independently, working independently on computers or tablets, and working together in teacher-led small groups. At the end of the session, the whole class comes together again with the teacher to wrap up the day. The teacher works with the whole class on reading skills and strategies, vocabulary, writing, and grammar. Students reconvene at the end of class for a whole group wrap-up. During this part, students reinforce what they learned during whole group instruction and the 3 stations.
In Read 180, while we are in whole group, we work together and our teacher talks about what we are going to learn today. We usually learn a new word by saying it twice and writing the definition with examples, and finally we share what we wrote. We also read stories and look for the key ideas.
Students work independently on the new student app on computers or tablets, following a personalized path that enhances their learning.
The student app is so cool, and it is my favorite part of Read 180. We work on our fluency and can record our own voices while we read. When we get into the zone menu, we can choose to practice spelling, writing, and reading. The best part is we are practicing to become better readers.
In this small group setting, students receive targeted, data-driven instruction unique to their individual needs while building relationships with their teachers.
Read 180 is a group of people working together to get better. We have 3 stations: student app, small group, and independent reading. In small group, we sit down with the teacher and read. She asks us questions about our reading. We do partner work and more lessons in our book. Read 180 has helped me a lot this school year, and I am growing as a reader.
Independent reading is the best in my opinion. You choose a book online at your Lexile level. There are many cool books. You can even win prizes. Together, our class has read over 700,000 pages. It is awesome because you learn how to improve your reading skills. Independent reading is a great time to sit down and relax. I read better because I read every day.
It is my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Stacy Meniger, who will share some information on instructional supports.
Good evening, Board. As Courtney said, I am Stacy Miniger. I'm teaching reading this year in 5th grade, and I'm also the Read 180 5th grade instructor. The Read 180 program has been a fabulous addition to Beiger this school year. As you just saw from Isaac's video, students are engaged, they're taking ownership of their learning, they feel positively about the gains they're making, and we are certainly celebrating the growth as they achieve it. Surprisingly, Read 180 wasn't as difficult to get up and running as you might think. In a year of having so many new items on our plate, I'll admit that I was a bit hesitant at first to take this on. But with some amazing support from Katie Stocksdale, Maria Guerrero, who is the literacy content specialist from HMH, and of course our own Courtney Kozik, we were able to implement Read 180 program right at the start of the school year. Katie has been a rock star. For those of you that were in the summer school trenches with us, you know how much work Katie put into summer school, getting it up and running, and then holding it all together during the duration. So it's no surprise that Katie was also a tremendous help with our Read 180 setup. She made multiple visits to Beiger, ensured that we had everything that we needed, and additionally, she spent an entire day in our Read 180 lab helping students log in to their accounts and then set it up so that they would just have a one-click login. Katie, this has been a lifesaver. She has served as our liaison with Maria Guerrero from HMH. She's always been available to answer a quick question or even just an answer to a late night email. So thank you so much, Katie. Beiger teachers participated in one-on-one training and coaching from Maria Guerrero this summer. Maria has had a few on-site observations to offer her support and suggestions to the Read 180 instructors. During one of her initial visits to our Read 180 lab, Maria quickly realized our need for additional help. Students were struggling with the student app portion, and some of them were even struggling to stay on task while reading independently. Instructors were having to leave their small group instruction to help assist the students. So I can only imagine what Maria must have been thinking when observing my classroom of 17 boys and 3 girls. As a result, though, of those observations, Maria went to Courtney, Mrs. Kozik, and suggested getting us some hands-on help to run these classes more effectively. Courtney listened to the suggestions and was able to provide 3 additional helpers. We have Karen Hicksenbaugh, who is helping Danielle Gilbert's 6th grade class. We have Lynn Hicksonbaugh, who assists me in 5th. Thank you, Lynn. And we have Jody Hamden, who assists Karen Hicksonbaugh's 4th grade class. Ladies, your help makes all the difference, and we are so very fortunate to have you and your support. Lastly, we wouldn't be able to do any of this without our leader, Courtney Kozik. Courtney is always the first one to say, let's just give it a try. If it works, great. If not, we're going to come back together. We'll brainstorm and figure it out. She's easy to work with and problem solve with. She respects our professional opinions, and because of her encouragement and support, Read 180 has been a huge success. So thank you, Courtney. So as you can see, we have some really great things going on here with our Read 180, and I hope that we can continue to use this program for years to come. Thank you.
Obviously, we've been closely monitoring the progress of our students along the way. Students have moved in and out of Read 180 according to their specific need or achievement. Just yesterday afternoon, we received our mid-year gains report. I'm ecstatic to share that 82% of our students have had a Lexile gain. 51% have met the end of the year growth goal, and 12% of our students have had 2 years of growth. To be more specific, our Super Read 180 campers, 29 students have grown between 1 year and 1 year and 9 months. 6 students have grown between 2 years and 2 years and 9 months, and 1 student has grown over 3 years in just 4 months. Our teachers and students are absolutely amazing, so I thank you. The 4 students that were highlighted in the video today, most who join us this evening, shared with me recently their extreme joy as they proudly shared their beginning of the year and middle of the year Lexile levels. They knew exactly where they were and how much they had grown because of their teachers and Read 180. You might be asking yourself, what are other students saying? And unfortunately, the sound is not working, so the kids actually voiced this for us, but it's not working currently. But I felt bad about my reading because I could not read that well. Read 180 has taught me to keep going. Before Read 180, I was very bad at reading out loud, but I'm getting better. Now, I even volunteer more. Read 180 is awesome. I love being able to find a comfy spot to sit and curl up with a just right book. Before, I didn't like to read, and now I do. I love the Read 180 room setup and the app, but my favorite is the lessons we do together because we have so much fun. This year, I'd like to read a lot more than I used to. The app really helps me practice, and I feel so much better about my reading. So finally, Mr. Barker and school board, here is Beiger's why. Thank you.
Because you come back 180 days a year, because you lean into the too hard, into these kids today can't, don't, want. Because as the days grow long, the wind bends and the road's ice, you show up. Because you take mistakes back, welcome them as a door to sacred learning space. Because you see them, see past the head on the desk, past the back to the door, right into buried hope, glint of curiosity. Because they keep you up at night. Because you set your table with kindness, integrity, and substance. Because your room is magic, they find you at lunch, after school, the place to be. Because you are their favorite teacher, because you are the special sauce, because you are their true north, magnetic force field, writing their compass, turning them around 180 days a year, because.
Well, that's a great why. It really is. And I don't think we've ever had a better organized presentation to the board. Thank you very much. And literacy, those are amazing numbers that what you're accomplishing, and so important because literacy, what opens all kinds of doors, gives confidence. It's an essential foundation. Thank you for what you're doing. There isn't anything else, then we'll move on to item 2.02, the job well done section of the agenda. Mrs. Smith?
Good evening. Tonight we're going to be, we get to honor Lynn Hicksonbaugh. She's the Title I Literacy Aide here at Beiger, and she is here with us tonight. So a little bit of information about Lynn. She began working with Joint Services in 1994 at Elsie Rogers, and at that time she was a program assistant with students for emotional disabilities. And then in 1996, she moved to the Mishawaka High School, where she worked in the same capacity as a PA. And then after she took a year off to have a child, she came back in 1998 through 2007 at Mishawaka High School. And then in 2007, she moved here to Beiger, and that's where, and so she's been at Beiger this whole time, and she's the Title I Literacy Aide. And something interesting too is kind of sweet. So in 1994, when she was at Elsie Rogers, a classroom teacher was Karen Hicksonbaugh. And so, and so now Karen's back here at Beiger, so it's gone full circle with them working together. So that's really sweet. And if you don't know, they are sisters-in-law. So, Lynn works with small groups of kids, about 4 to 5, who are needing extra help with reading intervention. She helps with testing, primarily with kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, and also I believe some 3rd grade as well in there. And as you just saw, you know, she works with all the other grades and pitches in wherever is needed. It doesn't take much. I kept hearing the same things over and over from staff here, that Lynn she's patient and caring and kind with each and every student. She pitches in whenever anyone needs anything. The teacher's always confident that they're receiving excellent reading intervention when they work with Lynn. So. And I know Lynn, she loves coming to work every day. That's always great to hear. And you can tell too. You can tell, like, just talk to her for a few seconds. You can tell she just has a passion for the kids and Beiger and the community, and she just loves it. And it's always fun to learn some new things about our colleagues. So some fun facts about Lynn. She has 2 boys. They're both Mishawaka High School grads. She's been married to Greg for almost 30 years, and he's here with us tonight to celebrate Lynn. They're both Mishawaka grads. They have extended families, so their family truly bleeds maroon, that's for sure. She's proudly helping to raise a grandkitty named Rocky. Maybe you could ask Greg if he likes that, if he agrees. But Lynn, she came here for middle school to Beiger. And she's an avid IU, Cubs, Vikings fan, loves going to Cubs games with family and friends. Enjoys trivia, and I believe she's pretty good at it too, so don't go up against her, you'll probably lose. And she loves 80s music, especially Bon Jovi. That's a good one. That's a good one. So one of, sorry, please go to the next one. Back one, please. One of Lynn's colleagues shared about her. Lynn cares for her students and is patient with their struggles. Her positive attitude makes working with her enjoyable, and she is vital to the success of Beiger students. And I have a feeling probably everyone at Beiger probably feels the same way. So tonight we get to say to Lynn, job well done. So if you want to come on up. And we have that for you to remember. And then also, I just want to say thank you to McAdoo's. They donated a gift card, so you get to enjoy a meal on them. So, and if you want, you can share. If you want to say anything, you're welcome to.
I just wanted to say that I feel really fortunate that I get to share my day with great students, extraordinary teachers, and a fantastic principal. I'm really proud to be a Bulldog. Thanks. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Congratulations.
All right, now that concludes the recognition section of the agenda, so if there's anyone here who's there just for that part of it, we'll pause for a moment, so you could leave if you'd like at this point, and be sure to take some refreshments on the way out. The cookies look wonderful. And Ms. Hicksonbaugh, thank you for all you do. You know, it's the people that make a difference in a really successful organization, and we're very blessed to have such wonderful, wonderful people. All right, we'll now move into the comments and questions from the floor section of the agenda. Item 3.01, representatives of the PTA. Is there anyone from the PTA who wishes to address the board? Not. Item 3.02, representatives of school employees. Item 3.03, representatives of the Mishawaka Education Foundation.
Probably should have taken a seat closer, so sorry for that. I walked in and I was discombobulated. Anyway, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you tonight about the Mishawaka Education Foundation. My name is Claire Johnson, and this is my 4th year on the Mishawaka Education Foundation and my 5th year as a teacher here for School City, Mishawaka. My 1st year at Beiger, I should say. Tonight, I'd like to give you an update on several happenings with the MEF. The MEF Winter Classroom Grant deadline will be on Monday, February 10th by 3:30 p.m., teachers. MEF is looking forward to many creative and innovative grant submissions to help our SCM staff succeed in the classroom. Please spread the word, and the application can be found on the website for electronic submission. The campaign to prevent blindness in Mishawaka schools is going well. Just a reminder that this campaign brings a mobile unit staffed by Bowling Eye Care and funded through a countywide United Way grant to all of the St. Joseph County area school foundations. The heartfelt stories are wonderful as our students leave this mobile unit with a free pair of eyeglasses and another pair to stay at home. This is truly making a difference for our students, so thank you for everyone involved. Thank you for your time.
And thank you. At item 3.04, general public, we've had one person sign up to address the board, Jake Crawford.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jake Crawford. I'm the landscape manager and forester for the City of Mishawaka Parks Department, and I'm also the instructor for the Landscape and Gardening Club at Mishawaka High School. I'm here tonight because I'd like to submit a request form for an overnight field trip for 2 students, Isaiah and Bailey, if you could raise your hands. They have been invited to come speak at the Indiana Parks and Recreation Association State Conference on their involvement and very hands-on role with the Mishawaka Education Foundation Community Greenhouse Project. So they have been involved from the early planning days, through our initial fundraising campaign, and also the construction of the building this summer with the landscape department. So this opportunity to speak at this conference is substantial. They will have each about 10 to 15 minutes to present their experiences on what it was like working on a project like this. And the main focus of our topic will be transforming community green spaces through crowdfunding, and then what roles students can have in shaping their local government. So they'll be presenting to about 40 to 60 people of the director, superintendent level from across the state of Indiana, which I think is a huge honor. So at this time, I'd like to submit this form to the board unless there are any questions on the field trip.
Well, not any question, but it's just a remarkable accomplishment. It's the Community Greenhouse Project it's a real testament to what can grow from a small seed, you know, at the high school, and to be invited to present is just a wonderful honor, and we're very proud of you. And yes, it's been you filled out the field trip request, and Mr. Ross has signed that, and
If he
If
hasn't
you have
signed
all
it, he
those
can.
signatures, then we can, our next
He's going
board.
to.
Okay, our next board meeting is on February 5th, which is before the field trip. So if you could get the signed, approved form to Mrs. Pettit here, it can get on the agenda.
Excellent, thank you
All
so
right,
much.
Thank
Very,
you.
very
And
proud of them.
congratulations. We maybe perhaps look forward to hearing what happens. All right, we'll now move into the consent agenda section of the evening. Item 4.01, approval of the minutes of the January 8, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees. It is recommended that the minutes of the January 8, 2020 regular meeting of the board be approved as presented. Item 4.02, approval of bill warrants and payroll. It is recommended that the bill warrants and payroll in the amount of $6,750,294.39 be approved for payment from the appropriate funds. Item 4.03, acceptance of donations. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees accept the donations as listed and documented. These are our coffee from Panera Bread, valued at $52.47 to the Exceptional Learners Program for the whole employee training. A gift certificate for $75 from Whole Foods to Exceptional Learners for the whole employee training. And Box Tops check for $70.70 to Twin Branch School for student activities. Item 4.04, extended student trip request. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the extended student trip as presented, which is a Mishawaka High School one-day student trip to Detroit on March 20th, 2020 to tour the Underground Railroad Museum. Item 4.05, approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Newman, if I could, the bill warrants and payroll is $7.5 million, which is generally considerably larger than what our normal payroll would be. If he could give us a thumbnail sketch of why.
So that amount includes general obligation bond and lease rental payments made at the end of December. We typically make those payments twice a year, end of June, end of December, so that is the reason for the higher amount.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? If not, it's been moved and seconded. Is there a vote? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. There's nothing under the Vision Initiative section of the agenda, so that takes us to reports and discussion items. Item 6.01, a vaping report. Mrs. Mann.
Good evening, members of the board and President Curry. I'm here tonight with Officer Tim Williams, who is the district's DARE officer, and we're going to be talking to you about sort of the status of tobacco and vaping use at the high school and give you some updates about our discipline plan for these things. For a little background, last year was the first year that we had grade level deans, and at the end of the school year, we found that we had 75 tobacco-related referrals, most of which were for students using vaping devices, and we were shocked, right? We thought, this is a lot, is this normal? We don't know how to combat this, and the discipline matrix that we had at the time was generally out-of-school suspensions for tobacco, alcohol, and drug use at school. And we felt that students needed to be educated more about what was happening so that we could fight this epidemic in our schools. So to give you all a little bit of background on what vaping is and how the problem has been sort of developing in the country, Officer Williams is here to talk to you a little bit about that.
We've all paid attention to the media and learned that nationally we had a 78% increase amongst our high school students in vaping and 48% amongst our actual junior high students. So what that does for the lower grades is that causes an increase as well because they see their older siblings doing it, so they're going to do it as well. So unfortunately, the biggest issue here was the new design of the current actual vapes today, which is Juul. So the old ones were all kind of bulky, heavy, kind of like really ugly, didn't want to have them. When Juul came out, they took our industry by storm, and they actually targeted the 15 to 25 age group when it comes to the actual tobacco product. Today's, I want to say current tobacco product, instead of the traditional tobacco cigarette, is going to be e-juice or e-cigarettes and vaping. So, and you can see that it's not only targeted to our children when it comes to marketing because of the sleek, tacky device that actually impresses our children and not us 50-year-olds that want to try and stop smoking. And then the flavors that they have out there with the mango, the fruit melodies, strawberry, whatever it is that attracts our children because they think it's safe. So the other thing is, the bad thing about this is when it comes to the studies, it's found that, the current youth and young adult Juul users, the majority of 63% of them did not know that every pod contains nicotine. Nicotine is the actual common denominator between the traditional tobacco cigarette and our e-cigarette slash Juuls today. So they're misleading our youth, thinking that it's safe because of these actual flavors. So, and that one pod contains the same amount of nicotine that one pack of cigarettes does. So, and when it comes to Juul, it's known that Juul actually has more than that, so it's about 1.5 packs of cigarettes when it comes to the amount of nicotine in the actual pods. So this is huge because it actually affects our children when it comes to concentrating in school. The other things that it really hits is that addiction. So, and that's the biggest issue we have right now is the addiction. So we have our children in junior high and high school becoming addicted to electronic cigarettes, so, and vapes because of the nicotine. So, and with the current future change of the actual age limit going from 18 to 21, we're gonna have a lot of 18-year-olds that are gonna be addicted to this product as well that are using it legally, but they're gonna have a lot of problems with it here in the future. So the biggest thing when it comes to the craving is when that child gets a head rush, that's actually their brain cells dying. And the brain cells that attacks is the dopamine in the brain. So, and when they talk about getting a head rush, that's what they're experiencing.
So in the past, our discipline progression was basically 3 days out of school, then 5 days, and then 10 days in a request for expulsion for tobacco, alcohol, and drugs on school grounds. And so we have done a lot of research and reading and conversation over the summer. The deans got together, we talked a lot. We went to the Whole Child Workshop where we met Judy Remus, who is part of SmokeFree St. Joe. She was an extraordinary resource for us. She came to school several times to support us and talk to us. We talked to administrators from Penn High School, from Crown Point High School, from administrators and teachers from all over the state who were at the Whole Child Workshop. We also did research online about different curriculums and devices that we could use. We could spend $40,000 on vape sensors in our bathrooms, but all of that seems like after the fact, and what we want to do is help kids understand before what they're doing and then help them quit, but also give them incentives to quit. So one of the things that we've been doing, instead of an automatic out-of-school suspension for a first offense with tobacco, we're giving students the option of choosing ISS, which they pretty much all have, and then when they're in school suspension, they get educated by Officer Williams. And one of the great things about that is that the students know Officer Williams because they went through the DARE program with him when they were younger, and so they know him and trust him, and he can tailor these sessions to the offenses, and kids feel comfortable asking him questions. They have a lot of myths, a lot of things that they think they know about these devices. A lot of them do think that they're first quitting smoking. They don't understand that they have nicotine in them. And so Officer Williams talks to them. Usually we have at most 5 students in this class. So far we've had 25 kids go through the program with him this year. No repeat offenders, but a few students have not chosen to go through the program. Subsequent offenses for tobacco also result in OSS, but along the way what we're doing is educating students and parents about the options for smoking cessation programs in our county. SmokeFree St. Joe is available through St. Joe Health. It is a 7-week program. There are 8 meetings. Students and parents are welcome to come. Anyone in this room that wants to stop smoking or using tobacco can go to this. It's free for anyone who's interested. And we've been offering this to students along the way. One thing that we're finding is that schools across the state are trying to use a two-pronged approach to battle vaping in their schools as well. So we're pretty much in line with this. Most schools that are ticketing are also trying to do education programs as well. So Hancock County schools, Nobleville schools, Carmel, Greenfield, and Washington Township are all using education and tickets through their local police force to try and help students. So unfortunately, and I think you're probably not surprised, that we're finding that out-of-school suspension is not a deterrent. It doesn't help kids quit. So one thing that is working is ticketing. Crown Point has been ticketing for quite a while. They told us that they never get to a third ticket and they hardly ever get to a second ticket. That the wake-up call to families about that your student has a problem and is addicted, the money of the ticket is also something that gets parents' attention. When students get ticketed or cited, and there is a difference that Officer Williams has explained to me several times and I can never remember, it gets attached to their driver's license, or students who don't have a driver's license, it gets on their record. Kids that get 2 tickets within a year, sometimes it will affect their getting a driver's license, and these are things that kids really want. Out-of-school suspension sometimes is also something that they really want. So this can work better for us, and we're hoping that it will.
So when it comes to citations, it's a great deterrent, and if we can let them know ahead of time that they can get it, then they're going to work to not get it. And that's what we see, especially when we talk about drunk driving and things like that. We see that helps with our community. The other thing is, when it comes to other offenses besides vaping and tobacco, it could be alcohol or marijuana or some other drug offense. When it comes to alcohol, officers can actually issue an actual citation for that for minor in possession, and if they've been drinking, minor consuming. A lot of times we skip that, especially in a school setting. Working with the schools, we'll send a report over to the Juvenile Justice Center, so whether they can handle that through the Juvenile Justice Center, and set them up in special programs when it comes to the drug programs and stuff like that. They get tested and stuff, and it helps deter them, and sometimes gets them off of it. When it comes to the second tobacco things, definitely they don't want to get another ticket, besides the $145. It goes on their actual driving record since it goes through traffic and misdemeanor court. So, and it's a citation, not a physical arrest as far as going to jail. Again, they're looking at passing the age limit from 18 to 21. They just passed it in the House. I think it has to go through the Senate now. And Governor Holcomb will sign that into law once that goes through there. Our goal is to try and be proactive instead of reactive when it comes to our students. A lot of the students in the high school have heard about this. My 5th grade teachers that work with me in DARE in our schools have heard about this probably since 2014 when we talked about the dangers of e-cigarettes and vapes. So our goal is to be proactive and help keep our children from getting into this mess where they become addicted to it, and that opens the gate to a path of destruction, which is what we don't want.
So this year we've been trying to educate our entire school community about the dangers of tobacco use and vaping in particular. So we first started by educating teachers. A lot of the teachers were saying, I'm finding all these USB drives. No, those are Juul pods. So we had to show them what they were. We brought some examples into faculty meetings. And then in the fall, we provided vaping education literature that Erica Sun so nicely made for us. We shared that with all of the parents who came in for conferences. And there was basically like a field guide to vaping devices because they all look so different. And sometimes parents really don't know what it is that they're looking at. Then in the fall, Mishawaka High School and John Young had a speaker. It's part of a Sweet Deception tour. Don't Fall for the Flavors is the name that the Indiana association that provided this to us gave it. It's through Voice Indiana. It uses peer-to-peer messaging, and we had a star named Moses Jones who came to both schools to talk about this. He's from Indianapolis, and he comes back to Indiana because he believes in the state, and so he really connected with the kids. They were very excited that he came to our school, and he shared a lot of information. A lot of it was similar to what Officer Williams talks about, but just hearing that over and over again is so important. And then we were recently contacted by a company called Rescue Agency. They just got a contract with the Indiana State Department of Health to do the new ad campaign that will be targeted at teens next year. So they're going to come into the school. They're going to do some focus groups. They can cap at 48 students. Each one of those students will get paid $50. The school will get $500 that we can use for programming or to pay people to come in and actually hold classes for our kids. So that's something we're going to be doing this spring, and hopefully that will help educate our kids more and get them maybe a little more aware and excited about just learning about it, and giving them good reasons to say no is the other thing that we really want to do. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Out of the kids that were nipped for smoking, what percentage would you say of parents were aware of the fact their kids were smoking?
I am not sure percentage-wise, but some of the parents are shocked and say, that's mine, and he took it. And some of them say, he's 18 and it's okay with me. And I say, but it's not okay at school. Right, so these are conversations that will be in flux as the new law goes forward, and Officer Williams isn't sure if 18-year-olds will be grandfathered in, current 18-year-olds, so if they'll be exempt, sort of like when the drinking age changed. We're just not sure how that's going to work. So part of the conversation is it might be legal outside of school for your 18-year-old child, but it's not okay at school. And then part of it is just whether you know or not what your kid is doing, this is really dangerous. Right, because it's a health emergency in our country.
It's just really hard to correct the behavior if you don't have a parent involved.
It is, yeah. So one of the things I'm hoping that we would be able to do with some of this money is have an evening session and invite parents in to talk to them about it too. It's really hard to stop it if they don't even know that it's happening because the device is so foreign to them, they don't know what they're looking at.
Too bad you can't ticket the parents.
How much are the tickets?
$45.
They're $25?
$145.
Good. They should be higher, because I think with our community and the parents that are aware of it or don't stop it or encourage it, I think that when we start to hit them with the finances of it, it will hopefully make a difference. I've said it a million times. We cannot change the atmosphere of our students without educating their parents. And their parents are the resource, because if you're not 18, it is very difficult to go in and purchase from a tobacco store. So most of them, from my experience, are coming from home and coming from parents. So I think that the hit with the charge, I think, should increase if it doesn't make a hit the first time. And so I applaud ticketing them because they don't know what they're doing. And the parents who are vaping, hopefully it is to quit smoking. But if it isn't, and it's just something that they're doing, it needs to be educated to them as well. So, good job with that.
And I really do want to say that this has been a big community effort. You know, we had many MPD officers in this conversation. I think the DA was involved with some conversations over the summer to make sure that he would support what we're doing at the schools. Jen Fisher and her SMAC kids were part of the conversation early on. Erica Sun came over, Meg Sauer came over. You know, this has been a lot of people talking about it who really care and want to find a solution. And I think it is going to be an evolving solution as we kind of struggle to meet it where it is, instead of just having a disciplined reaction to a problem that isn't really fixing the problem.
If the 21 passes, and I think it will they be ticketed on the street if they're vaping and under 21?
That really depends on how quick we get that information out, what the actual law says, and what we can do as far as enforcement. So that's going to let us know what we can do as far as enforcement goes. I would say that it would probably be something where we may ticket them, but we may offer a program instead of them paying a fine. They may offer them a program to go through, like with the St. Joe Hospital, the 7-week program to help them get off, because the bottom line is we have too many people that are going to be addicted to it. And, you know, when you have 18-year-olds who are being hooked up to respirators to breathe because their lungs are infected and swollen, You know, my 25-year-old just spent 6 days in the hospital and only vaped for a month. So, and it did that much damage to his lungs. So, you know, the bottom line is you want to make sure that we prevent this. And that's what this is all about, is trying to prevent our children from going through this. And, you know, unfortunately, back in 2014, we saw this coming. So, and Jewel just made it happen a lot quicker.
So, I don't know how much everyone is kind of up to speed on what's going on with Jewel, but Jewel was hardcore targeting 15-year-olds. And they got into a lot of legal trouble for this. And I think that's what's really scary, because when I was going through the DARE program not that long ago, we saw all these like advertisements or commercials where there was the Joe Cool Camel cigarettes, and there was this targeting, and no one understood the negative effects of smoking. So now everyone's like, oh, smoking's terrible, you're gonna get lung cancer. No one really knows the long-term effects of vaping, and the fact that this was getting targeted to 15-year-olds who are still developing is absolutely terrifying. It's like giving crack to a 15-year-old. And so I really applaud your entire team, the Mishawaka Police Department, our team that was working on this, because I think this is so important right now to get people educated on what vaping is, the long-term effects, and the fact, like this is the reason why they're changing the law from 18 to 21, is because it's affecting our kids. It's not just 15-year-olds. You're gonna have 12-year-olds or 8-year-olds because big brother or big sister's doing it, and they're watching the same programming that a 15-year-old is. Yeah, it's not on TV, but is it on their YouTube? While they're watching YouTube, is it the subscriptions and the advertisements that come up there, or through their social media? Absolutely. And that's not just 15-year-olds, it's the younger generations too, and we need to nip this in the bud. So.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of piggyback on that, because anecdotally I've heard, this is a high school, perhaps junior high, approach, but I understand that it's an issue also in elementary schools, and that's something we need to be aware of, and we need to address, because if we can deter early, then maybe you don't run into so many problems when people come to the high school. So this is something that even younger students need to be aware of, and we need to help with that. I really appreciate the restorative treatment and education component of the disciplinary ladder. I do notice that under step 2, and that it's available for any of the steps for the offenses. And steps 1 for each of these, and then for step 3 of the under tobacco, there's an alternative to try to encourage people to do the to do the educational component, but I don't see that under step 2 here. I mean, it just is a flat out, under tobacco 5 days OSS, and under alcohol 10, but there isn't an opportunity to maybe mitigate that if you go to encourage going into an educational program. And the only other comment is, I think this is great, but I look at stuff like this as a lawyer, and our job is to quibble, and you could get pushed. I mean, the whole thing is about vaping, but once you drop down into the disciplinary part, vaping's never mentioned, and I wonder whether it would be useful to maybe next to tobacco and the column for that, and next to alcohol and marijuana and the column for that, put an asterisk to say that does include vaping of any of the active ingredients in these substances, because otherwise somebody will come back, it's not tobacco, it's nicotine, or it's not marijuana, it's the active ingredient in marijuana, and say that the policy doesn't apply because it isn't sufficiently specific. So that's just a nitpicky suggestion, but that's my job, is to pick nits, so it's my day job. But this is wonderful, and it's all part of our approach to having a safe environment and raising healthy children. So thank you.
I too want to say I appreciate your efforts. I think you've had a very comprehensive approach to this from really the beginning of the year to now, and the educational component of this is vital. I read every day about high school students, middle school students being taken out by ambulance to hospitals due to vaping may be on their first time and have a loss of lung function for the rest of their lives. I know in late October, the convocations that were held at John Young and Mishawaka High School, I thought those were excellent. And then I found out during that day, one of the people who helped bring that to us was involved in the Rick Stoddard campaign, if you remember that from 2001, I believe, in the Super Bowl, and who was someone who lost his wife due to smoking. And this is truly an epidemic that we have now with vaping, and I appreciate all of your efforts. I don't think our students recognize the dangers, and certainly parents and other people in our community, so thank you for that awareness.
Thank you. Item 6.02, review of the 2020 budget order from the Department of Local Government Finance. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President. President Curry, members of the board. Earlier this month, the Business Department received the 1782 notice from the Department of Local Government Finance, or the DLGF. This notice is received once the DLGF has completed their review of our budget. The 1782 notice outlines our assessed valuation, tax rates, property tax levy, and appropriation in our education operations, debt service, and referendum operating funds. The school corporation had 10 calendar days to review the notice, and if no changes are requested, the numbers are finalized, and that becomes our budget order. I've attached a comparison of 2019 to 2020. And so just to touch on the numbers a little bit, the very, very good news is our assessed valuation increased by just shy of $47 million, or over 6.5%. As a result, our tax rate decreased by 4.67%, and overall, our property tax levy, according to the budget order, increased by 2.52%, but I do want to point out, again, 2020 with the expiration of our exempt debt fund, it's not reflected in the levy totals, but on that sheet, you'll see the $3.3 million for 2020 under the operations fund. That will be probably closer to about 1.5 million. We will not collect all of that money, so circuit breaker impact is not reflected in levy totals on the budget order. But overall, it's very good news for the school corporation. Anytime your assessed valuation increases, it's good news, and when it increases by that much, it's very good news. It's not on this form, but the assessed valuation for our referendum operating funds and capital referendum actually includes TIF districts, and that increased by over 10%, so that was even better. So again, just happy to answer any questions from the board. This is informational only. Thank you.
Good news.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Newman? All right, that's good news. Item 6.03, My Choice Mishawaka. Mrs. Sauer and Mr. Brew.
Good evening, everybody. President Curry, Mr. Barker, and members of the school board, and all of our wonderful guests. We're here to talk to you about an event that we held last week, and it was on January 16th, where we had incoming freshmen from John Young Middle School, as well as invited students from 6 area private schools to Mishawaka High School for a 21st century show and tell called My Choice Mishawaka. Our plan was to expand the annual John Young 8th grade orientation, and for the first time this year, we welcomed other students who might be considering Mishawaka High School as their school of choice. To make the evening more entertaining but still informative, we added student-led presentations in 14 different venues around the building. More than 200 postcard invitations like this one of Rachel Gomez were distributed to 8th graders at area private schools, and more than 400 were mailed as personal invitations to the John Young Middle School parents with 8th grade students. 6 students from various interests and backgrounds were chosen for the special invitations. Rachel was just one of them, and the school board members are looking at some of the other ones. So those turned out very nice, we thought, and then they took part, all of the students took part in the presentations that evening.
So our night began, we estimate about 500 to 600 people that came to the open house. We wanted it to be easy for the families to register and to get information from those families, so we created a QR code that they could scan with their phones, and then they would put in their information so that we could get some information from them. That QR linked to a survey, as well as a sign-in sheet and some other information that we got from those students about their pathway that they would choose or that they were looking at following when they got to the high school. So the slide that we used, that's the actual slide we used for them. The presentation also began with a video created by our very own students and the Mishawaka Network, so we'll go ahead and play that now. After we showed the video, we heard from Mishawaka's most decorated athlete. Oh, sorry. Did I do it? Yeah, you did. Oh, thanks. Sorry. We heard from our most decorated athlete, 2015 graduate Anna Rohr. She's now working on her master's degree and in her 5th year of eligibility to run at the University of Notre Dame. Rohr talked about the opportunities and the support that she had received at Mishawaka High School, which was great. She was quoted as saying, "Unlike other schools, Mishawaka wants you to try everything, not just pick 1 or 2 things like other high schools." She emphasized that this type of environment had allowed her to participate in a fall sport and play in the high school marching band at the same time. This theme of opportunity and the supportive environment of MHS echoed throughout the night during the breakout sessions. Guests heard this message from current students during their presentation in graphic arts, robotics, TV and radio, early college, athletics, and more. So this year we did something a little different. Instead of having the open house kind of feel just in the cafeteria, we actually broke up the building a little bit, and we put some of our pathway or our departments in different areas of the building and gave some of our families some choice in what they wanted to go see depending on what their students were interested in. So we had, robotics in an area of the engineering. We had culinary arts that were actually doing some baking and handing out some food as they were visiting. And so we gave all of our guests the maps, and then they kind of went off and did whatever they wanted to do and see throughout the building. As you can see, we wanted our guests to see the different parts of our building because our building is beautiful. And the maps were given out to these guests so that they could plan their night. We actually have little spaces that they could start planning where they wanted to go. They could pick 6 different breakout sessions that they could go see.
My Choice Mishawaka gave us a chance to talk about some of our best things that go on at Mishawaka High School. One was the highly successful early college program. We are the first early college program to be endorsed in St. Joe County, and with this first cohort, kids earned more than 1,300 college credits and saved more than $500,000. It's just an incredible thing. And that was one of the first places a lot of the parents went, was there, and also to the 21st Century Scholar Program. So we were really happy to be able to show them more about that. We had applications for both those programs so they could go ahead right there and start filling them out. It also gave us a chance to do the best school, do the Reader's Choice Award for the best public school that we got from the South Bend Tribune. It's just a nice way to kind of reinforce that and brand that. Who wouldn't want their kid to go to the best private school in the area, right? So that's what we did. And we were also able to answer questions about School City of Mishawaka's open enrollment policy. Miranda Scheiko and Mary Hauser set up an area in the cafeteria, and they had a big sign that says enrollment questions here. They said they got a lot of questions all night long about different things, so that was really nice. 207 students registered through the QR code registration, but only 5 of those 207 signed in as students currently enrolled in other schools other than Mishawaka. We know from anecdotal information that that's not right, that there were more John Young Middle School students than that, and that there were more students from outside our district who are there. So that's one of the things that we want to improve going forward. We really put this together very quickly and had a lot of things that we want to add next year. One of those is collecting more accurate information on who and why the people came, and improve that process for next year. We'd also like to have some additional marketing, move up our deadlines, and change some of the setup around the high school. We're also discussing use of these strategies for events at other grade levels in an effort to increase enrollment in other schools. So we would really like to thank so many people who helped with this. It was really Jen Fisher who started the whole thing, and that was an 8th grade orientation, and then we decided to throw all this other stuff at her, so probably within a month this was put together. And Heidi Peebles, Lynn Howard, Matt Rendell, John Ross, Jessica Mann, and of course all of the staff who came out, and especially the students. The students were really the highlight. Everybody commented on how wonderful they were in the presentations. And then overall, My Choice Mishawaka went very well, and it was well received, and it gives us a really solid foundation to build on for next year.
I heard about it. I wasn't able to go, but what I heard was it was fantastic. The presentation was great. It presented Mishawaka schools in a light that really was positive, and I hope we do this every year.
It's a really good plan for introducing people to areas of interest, to get them excited about what they want to do when they come to the high school. I was not able to go, but I also heard very good things about it, and there's a very good 20-25-minute Mishawaka Network piece on it as well. I think it's something definitely worth continuing and developing in future years.
Any ideas anybody has, let us know.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now in the Human Resources section of the agenda, item 7.01, Personnel Report. Mr. Calderon.
Yeah, President Curry, Mr. Barker, it's recommended that the Personnel Report dated January 22nd, 2020 be approved as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the report as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion or questions for Mr. Calderon? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now moving into Curriculum, Instruction, and Technology, item 8.01, the Category 2 E-rate funding. Mr. Mabee.
Thank you for your time tonight. It's going to be another positive form of a informational description tonight. New rules were solidified for the Category 2 E-rate funding for internal connections, which represents network electronics and wireless access points. These announcements were then posted in December of 2019. These rules actually help streamline the Category 2 E-rate process and establish a 5-year budget cycle for these Category 2 E-rate. Now, this creates a great opportunity. A gap year has also been created. This gap year presents us with an opportunity in this 2020 cycle. This gives approximately $185,000 in Category 2 E-rate available in the 2020 before this budget cycle resets for the 2021 school cycle. We have, due to timing and bidding requirements by E-rate, placed an RFP out for, replaced it out on January 8th due to the timing restrictions for quotes and things. We look forward to bringing you back the quotes and a more thorough explanation of how this fits in advancing the technology plan back on the February 26th board meeting. This is more informational. Is there any other questions I can help answer, or
I don't know enough about this to ask questions about it, except that it's wonderful to get the extra money here, and thank you for saving us all of this.
I'll see you in February 26th.
All right, thank you. Business and operations, 9.01, recommendation to award the Mishawaka High School West Vestibule project to R. Yoder Construction. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Curry, members of the board. The legal advertisement for the Mishawaka High School traffic safety plan, in addition to the Mishawaka High School West Vestibule, was advertised in accordance with Indiana Code. Bids were received on December 19th, 2019, and we reviewed the bid results with the board earlier in January. For this evening, we are seeking approval of R. Yoder Construction for the project that is the MHS West Vestibule at an amount of $92,882.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the recommendation. Is there any discussion on the motion or questions for Mr. Newman?
When would it possibly construction start?
On the West Vestibule, I believe after graduation, we can start certain elements of the West Vestibule project.
This year's graduation?
Yes.
And complete prior to?
Completed prior to the start of school. Actually, I think we put a July 31 deadline on that project.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 9.02, recommendation to award the Mishawaka High School Traffic Safety Plan to HRP Construction. Back to you, Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Curry. So similarly, the legal advertisement for the traffic safety plan was advertised in accordance with Indiana Code. Bids were received December 19th, 2019. School City of Mishawaka received 6 bids on the Mishawaka High School Traffic Safety Plan. We reviewed the bid results earlier in January, and for this evening, we are recommending approval of HRP Construction for a base bid amount of $2,681,000, in addition to alternates A, B, C, D, and E, and not E. Alternates A, B, C, and D.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the recommendation. Is there any discussion on the motion or questions for Mr. Newman? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 9.03, recommendation to approve exempt debt service fund transfer resolution number 2020-003.
Thank you, President Curry. Per Indiana Code, payments for debt issued prior to July of 2008 were exempt from property tax caps in both Lake and St. Joseph counties. The Constitution of the state of Indiana prohibits this exemption after December 31 of 2019. In order to make the transition, the cash balance in our exempt debt service fund must be transferred to our non-exempt debt service fund. If approved, Resolution 2020-003 will permit the Business Department to transfer the December 31, 2019 balance in the exempt debt service fund of $1,915,633.62 to the non-exempt debt service fund effective January 1st of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion or questions for Mr. Newman? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 9.04, recommendation to approve the 2020 school bus purchase. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Curry. According to School City Mishawaka's bus replacement plan, replacement of bus number 1 is scheduled for calendar year 2020. Bus number 1 is currently an 84-passenger Thomas yellow bus, and it was originally purchased back in 2007. The Business Department, in conjunction with the Operations Department, has determined that an 84-passenger replacement makes the most sense when looking at the makeup of our current fleet. An 84-passenger, while more expensive, obviously has the additional seating capacity because of it being a pusher, quote, bus. It also has additional storage capacity when compared to the other models. So between the seating capacity and the storage capacity, we do believe it is worth the additional cost, and we would like to continue to have an 84-passenger as part of our fleet. Similar to previous years, we utilize the Central Indiana Educational Services Center's cooperative purchasing program, and we have selected a Thomas through Curlin Bus Sales and Leasing as the low quote. So the administration is seeking approval of the purchase of an 84-passenger Thomas bus for $116,702.
Mr. Newman, are all of our buses Thomas buses now, or almost all of them?
Ooh, if they're not, we're very, very close.
Okay.
I believe they are all Thomas buses now.
I thought Thomas was a train.
I knew it.
Official board quote. You could feel it.
I know it.
It was brewing.
It was coming.
I know it was coming.
Well, I do have a question. What is a push bus? What pusher?
That means the engine is in the rear.
Oh, okay.
So it's a pusher bus, turns a little differently, and that setup allows for the additional storage under the bus.
Okay. Thank you.
Move
Thank
for
you.
approval. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the recommendation. Is there any discussion on the motion or questions for Mr. Newman? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
It's the bus that could.
Item 9.05, recommendation to award bid for tax anticipation warrant sale 2020. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Curry. Notice of the sale of tax anticipation warrants for School City of Mishawaka was advertised on December 19 and 26th of 2019 in both the Mishawaka Enterprise and South Bend Tribune. Bids were due to be received on January 14th, 2020. School City of Mishawaka received 3 bids on the sale of our tax anticipation warrants of $1,611,000. We received bids from Centier Bank, Oppenheimer and Co., and I love this name, First Internet Public Finance. The lowest net interest cost was from First Internet Public Finance of $26,922.68, which is a net interest rate of 1.75, and we are recommending acceptance of the low bid.
Where are they located?
Indianapolis.
Okay.
And it's real place?
It's a real place.
Okay.
We received the good faith deposit, so they're a real deal.
All right.
Congratulations on that.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the recommendation. Any discussion on the motion or questions about it? In that case, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Leadership and policy, item 10.01, first reading of policy updates. Ms. Pettit.
Okay, bear with me as I read this rather lengthy policy updates. I'll try and go as quickly as possible. This is update volume 32, number 1, presented to us by Neil in October of 2019. The first one is bylaw 0151.1, Board of Finance, School City of Mishawaka. And the revisions to this bylaw are being made in response to Senate Enrolled Act 549. It requires the superintendent to prepare a report which assesses the financial condition of the school corporation and share it with the Board of Finance during its annual meeting. Policy 1520, employment of administrators in addition to the superintendent. This policy has been revised due to Senate Enrolled Act 281, which changed the contract term for contracts with principals, assistant principals, and put limits on contract buyouts for administrative contracts. The next 5 policies, 1520.08, 3120.08, 4120.08, 8120, 8455, about personnel for extracurricular activities, volunteers, and coaching. The changes were all the same for these policies, and they have been revised in response to House Enrolled Act 1209, which added new sections to the Indiana Code regarding Indiana High School Athletic Association coaching certification, background checks, reports required to be made to the IHSAA for certain inappropriate behavior by coaches. Policy 5111, determination of legal settlement and eligibility for enrollment of students without legal settlement in the corporation. This policy has been revised to reflect the options for parents, adult students, and juvenile courts conducting certain proceedings to elect to extend the date of the student's withdrawal from the corporation to the end of the semester, and the corporation's option to elect to extend the date of the student's withdrawal from the corporation to the end of the school year. Policy 511.01, homeless students. There were revisions here in this policy completed to address the changes made by Senate Enrolled Act 464, particularly training required for staff regarding homeless students, which we have already started doing. Policy 5223, release time for religious instruction. We are recommending to retire this policy. It is no longer relevant. Policy 5600, student discipline. The student discipline policy has been revised to reflect 2018 legislation in House Enrolled Act 1421 pertaining to development of a model policy on equitable discipline. The changes include a reference to the obligation to work with parents to develop, review the student code of conduct periodically, following the state adoption of a model policy, and an option to request assistance from the State Department of Education regarding implementation and professional development. Policy 5610, suspension and expulsion of students. It has been revised to reflect changes made by Senate Act 29 pertaining to the requirements that students complete work during periods of suspension and expulsion, providing an option for allowing students to complete tests, quizzes that are missed during suspension and expulsion. Policy 6220, budget prep. Revisions to this policy have been made in response to Tax Enrolled Act 1003. If a school corporation passes a school safety referendum, tax levy, and/or debt service, these newly developed budget funds should be added to the budget prep process and are being added as options to budget preparation policy. The policy is revised to include the new requirement of reporting to the board at the time of budget prep, the total transfer, if any, from the school corporation's education fund to the operations fund. Policy 6230, budget hearing. This policy has been revised in response to House Enrolled Act 1003 that now requires the superintendent to disclose at the annual budget hearing whether the transfer from the education fund to the operations fund will be more than 15%. Policy 6520, payroll deductions. Very minute changes made here. Policy 7300, disposition of real policy. Also very minute revisions made here. And moving on to a new policy, 7440.03, small unmanned aircraft systems known as drones. So this is a new policy that we want to adopt. It can either prohibit or permit the use of drones on school property. We would like to permit the use of drones on school property by school personnel, and they must fully comply with the FAA regulations established. So we're presenting that new one to you. And then we have contacted members of the high school who are most involved in operating the drones. Policy 8310, public records, very basic revision there. Policy 8400, school safety, has been revised to include provisions pertaining to school safety specialists and incorporate the changes in the law made by House and Road Act 1063, namely the bleeding control kits. Policy 8405, environmental health and safety issues. We had some minute policy revisions there. 8420, emergency preparedness plans and drills. And this policy has been revised in response to House and Road Act 1004, which revised state law on school safety with respect to disaster drills, including the requirement to conduct an active shooter drill near the beginning of the school year. 8462, child abuse and neglect. The policy language has been revised to clarify that school personnel are required to notify the Department of Child Services if child abuse or neglect is suspected. Additionally, the corporation may decide that law enforcement also be notified. And finally, it allows us flexibility for the administrators to decide whether or not to notify parents. Policy 8600, minute changes to transportation. And that's it. I present to you the first reading of the policies.
Well, Ms. Pettit, thank you. I know this is a very tedious thing, the policy revisions, but it's also essential in order to keep us compliant and moving forward.
I have a question. On the drone policy, it requires us to look at two options?
One option being we don't permit people to.
Correct.
And then the other that we do.
Is there a recommendation?
Recommendation will be that we allow it based
Staff.
upon following. Yes.
Okay.
That we follow the guidelines as provided by the legislation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it has to be approved by superintendent, doesn't it, to be able to, so it's not just
Right.
automatic. And then since this was first reading, these will be on the agenda at the next board meeting for approval. In the meantime, they're presented for our review and consideration, so. All right.
I too want to thank Ms. Pettit. She's done a great job of learning this process. It's new for me also with Neola. So I want to thank her. The folders of information that we received and she poured through were very tall. So thanks to her for that, and we'll have that for you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Ann. Final item on the agenda, 11.01, public announcements. The next regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees will be held on February 5th, 2020 at 6 p.m. at the Administrative Center, 1402 South Main Street, Mishawaka, Indiana, 46544. Is there anything else to come before the board? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming. And